I went to meet my new neighbor with a store-bought pie in one hand and the polite smile of a man who had already decided this would take 8 minutes. That was the whole plan. Knock, welcome her to the street, say something normal like, let me know if you need anything. Then go back across the road to my quiet house, my invoices. And the dinner I'd probably forget to eat until it got cold. The door opened, my ex stood there, Sabine Whitman. 10 years older, more beautiful than I had any right to notice, and staring at me like the universe had just played a practical joke and forgot to tell either of us. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then she smiled in this shocked, bright, almost helpless way and said, "You, but how, come in." I didn't move. She looked at the pie in my hand. "Is that for me?" I looked down at it like it had personally betrayed me. "Apparently." Sabine laughed once, nervous and soft. "Grady." I hadn't heard my name in her voice in 10 years. I had built an entire life around not hearing it. I owned a small repair and custom woodworking business in Willow Creek, Oregon, nothing fancy. Cabinets, fences, decks, built-ins, the kind of work people needed when their house started arguing with them. I worked too much, lived alone, kept my place clean, and convinced everyone I was doing great because my truck was paid off and my calendar was full. That was the version of me I understood. The man standing on Sabine's porch with a pie and no working thoughts, I had no manual for him. She stepped back from the doorway. "Please, come in for a minute." I glanced past her. The house had moving boxes stacked against the wall, a half-unpacked lamp on the floor, and that new place people pretend is temporary look. "You live here now?" "I do, across from me," she winced. "I didn't know, that's a pretty good line." "It's true, sure, and I'm here because I love community outreach." She took the pie from me before I could decide whether to leave with it. "You still do that, you make a joke when you're uncomfortable." "I also breathe when I'm uncomfortable, a lot of overlap." Sabine held the door open wider. 5 minutes. "Then you can run back to your very masculine silence." I stared at her. She gave me a small shrug. "Too soon? About 10 years too late, actually." Her smile faded, but she didn't look away. "Fair, I should have left." Any reasonable man would have nodded, wished her luck, and crossed the street before the past got its shoes on. Instead, I walked in. The kitchen was half unpacked, but she had already found the coffee maker. That told me more about her priorities than any long conversation could have. She set the pie on the counter, found 2 mugs, and looked over her shoulder. "Coffee? It's after 7:00. You drink coffee after 7:00. I did when I was 21 and thought sleep was for people with weak character. You still work too much." I leaned against the counter. "Keeping more distance than necessary." "You still answer questions with questions," she poured anyway. Yes, we stood there like two adults pretending they hadn't once planned a future in cheap apartments, late-night diners, and ridiculous confidence. She had been the first person who made me think home wasn't a place. Then she disappeared from my life with one phone call and no explanation that made sense. She handed me a mug. "Thanks," I said. "You're welcome." The silence had too much history in it. She looked at the boxes. "I moved from Portland last week. I took a job doing patient coordination at a physical therapy clinic in town. You picked Willow Creek." "I wanted smaller, quieter." She gave me a careful look. "I didn't pick your street." "That's good. I'd hate to think you spent 10 years planning the most awkward welcome visit in American history." She almost smiled. "For what it's worth, I would have chosen a better outfit." I snorted despite myself. That annoyed me, not her joke but my reaction. Sabine noticed because of course she did. She always noticed when I softened by half an inch. "How have you been?" she asked. "Busy?" "That's not an answer. It's the answer I give people who haven't earned the long one." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "I haven't." I expected her to defend herself. She didn't. She just took the hit and nodded. That was new. The Sabine I knew at 21 had been quick, proud, funny, and impossible to pin down when something hurt. This woman still had the quickness, but there was something quieter in her now. Not weaker, just more aware of the cost of running. I set the mug down. "I should go." "Yeah." She nodded again, then said too quickly, "Thank you for the pie." It was supposed to be neighborly, not historically complicated. "I'll try to eat it in a simple way." I walked to the door. She followed, but didn't crowd me. At the threshold, she said, "Grady." I stopped. "I really didn't know you lived here." I looked back. "I believe you." Her shoulders lowered a little. Then I added, "I'm not sure what to do with that yet." She swallowed. "Me neither." I crossed the street feeling like I'd stepped out of my life and into a version that had been waiting behind a door. By midnight, I had answered no emails, eaten nothing, and stood in my garage staring at a workbench like it might offer advice. It didn't. Tools are loyal, but they don't do emotional strategy. The next morning, I was getting into my truck when Sabine hurried down her driveway. Grady, wait. I had one hand on the door. Morning. She stopped a few feet away, slightly out of breath. I need to ask something and I know it's weird. Yesterday set a pretty high bar. The backyard fence is half falling over. The previous owners told me it was cosmetic. That was generous. One section is leaning like it's had a long week. I'm booked. I figured. I didn't say no, she blinked. You didn't. I said I'm booked. Different sentence. She folded her arms. You still make people work for simple information. You still try to manage conversations before they happen. That landed. Her eyes dropped for a second. I hated that I knew the exact difference between her being irritated and her being ashamed. She lifted her chin. Could you look at it? Not as a favor. I'll pay you. I'm not charging you to tell you your fence is losing a fight with gravity. Then dinner. I stared at her. She rushed on. As payment, not a date. Unless that makes it worse. It probably makes it worse. It makes it very specific. I cook better than I explain myself. That has not been proven in court. She gave me a look. You're enjoying this. A little. That earned me a real smile, and it was a problem, not a small problem, a full permit required problem. I checked my watch. I can look at it after work. 6:00, 6:30, I'll be home. I closed the truck door, then opened it again because apparently I had more dignity than brains. Sabine, yeah, if this is you trying to be friendly because last night felt strange, you don't have to. She shook her head. It's a broken fence, Grady. Good, and maybe I wanted a reason to talk to you again. There it was, not dramatic, not polished, just honest enough to follow me all day. I showed up at 6:30 with a tool bag and the firm intention to be professional. That lasted until Sabine met me at the gate with 2 glasses of iced tea and said, I watched 3 videos about fence repair. I'm basically your competition now. I took 1 glass. Did any of those videos tell you not to stand under the leaning section? Yes. And yet I wanted to look confident. You looked brave. Confidence requires better math. She laughed and we went around back. The fence was worse than she'd said. 2 posts were loose, 1 rail had split, and the gate dragged along the ground like it resented being used. I crouched near the post and pressed it with my hand. This needs more than a screw. I was afraid you'd say that. You were hoping I'd say, good news, Sabine, fences are emotional. Just encourage it. I would have accepted that. She knelt nearby, keeping enough distance not to be in the way, but close enough that I could feel her attention. Can it be fixed today? She asked. Stabilized today. Fixed properly this weekend. I can help. You own work gloves? No, then you can supervise from a safe distance. I'm very good at supervising. I remember. The words came out before I could. Stop them. She looked at me. I focused on the post. Hand me that level. She passed it over. Our fingers touched for half a second. It was nothing. It was also nothing, and both of us knew it, which made it worse. For the next hour, we worked like people trying to hide behind practical tasks. I braced the post, tightened the gate hardware, cut a temporary support, and Sabine held boards, found screws, and asked questions that were mostly useful. At one point, she stood beside me while I drilled a bracket into place. Still doing everything yourself? She asked. I have 2 employees. That's not what I meant. I know, she waited. I lowered the drill. It's easier to rely on wood than people. Wood at least cracks where you can see it. She looked at me then, and I regretted saying it. That was about me, she said. That was about lumber, Grady. I picked up another screw. Dinner still part of this deal. She let me change the subject. Yes, then don't burn it while interrogating me. I made lasagna yesterday. It only needs heating. Prepared. Strategic. Slightly intimidating. I had a feeling you'd say yes. That confidence again. No, she said quietly. Hope. I didn't answer. We finished stabilizing the fence as the yard settled into evening. Nothing fancy, just solid enough to keep it standing until I could do it right. She walked the gate open and closed it twice. Well, I asked. She smiled. It no longer screams when I use it. I'll add that to the invoice. Inside, dinner felt dangerous because it was too easy. We sat at her small kitchen table, ate lasagna, and talked about safe things first. Work the town, bad rentals, her move, my business. The kind of conversation 2 people have when both are stepping around a hole in the floor. Then she asked, do you still have that old blue truck? No, it died with dignity. You cried? I saluted. She laughed into her water. I pointed my fork at her. Don't judge. That truck heard more secrets than most therapists. I remember. It also smelled like sawdust and drive-through fries. That's called character. It was called a health concern. We both smiled. And then the smile faded at the same time. She set her fork down. I miss this. The room changed. I leaned back. Sabine, I know I shouldn't just say things like that. Probably not, but I did miss it. I missed talking to you. I missed how you made everything less heavy without pretending it wasn't heavy. I looked at the table because her face was too familiar. You left. I know, no warning, no real conversation. Just a call where you sounded like you were reading a weather report. She closed her eyes for a second. I know. I asked you what happened. You said it's better this way. That was the whole explanation. Her voice got smaller. I was a coward. I waited 10 years for a sentence like that. When it came, it didn't fix anything. It just opened a locked door. Why? I asked. She looked at me for a long time. You really don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't have spent a decade guessing. She stood abruptly and took our plates to the sink, though neither of us had finished. Her hands moved too fast. I thought you knew, she said. Knew what? She turned around and then out of nowhere she laughed. Not because it was funny, because the truth was apparently so ridiculous she couldn't hold it in any other way. This is going to sound insane. I've got time. My friend Renee saw you. Doing what? At a jewelry store. I stared at her. That's the crime. With a woman. I didn't move. Sabine pressed her palms to the counter behind her. She called me and said she saw you sitting with some woman at a jewelry counter. You were looking at rings. She said the woman had her hand out and you were sliding one on her finger. For a moment the kitchen went completely still. Then I said that was my sister. Sabine's face changed. I kept going because stopping would have been worse. Lily went with me because I didn't know anything about rings. She tried one on because I needed to see the size and shape on an actual hand. I was buying it for you. Sabine didn't speak. I gave a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. You ended our relationship because my sister helped me pick out your engagement ring. She covered her mouth. I reached into my pocket. I don't know why I carried it that night. Habit maybe. Or damage with a schedule. For 10 years, I had worn that ring on my pinky on days when I needed to remember that love wasn't something I had imagined. It was a simple ring. The stone had been removed years ago after the setting got damaged at work. I had kept the band because I couldn't throw it away and couldn't give it to anyone else. I slid it off and placed it on the table. Sabine stared at it. That was yours, I said. Supposed to be anyway. She took one step closer, then stopped like she didn't trust herself to touch it. Grady, no, don't do the soft voice yet. Her eyes filled. I thought you were choosing someone else, so you chose for both of us. She nodded, tears slipping down her face now. Yes, you didn't ask me. I was young, I was furious. I was embarrassed. I thought if I heard you explain it, I'd believe you even if you lied. And I couldn't stand that. That's not better. I know. I was going to propose that weekend. She put one hand against the edge of the table. I watched her cry and felt two things at once. The old pain, sharp and insulted, and relief. Ugly, inconvenient relief because she hadn't left because she stopped loving me. She left because of a mistake so stupid it almost needed its own address. Sabine wiped her face and reached for the ring, then pulled her hand back. I don't have the right. No, you don't, she flinched. I picked it up and held it in my palm, but I'm tired of pretending it meant nothing. It meant everything, she whispered. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't make some grand promise. I left after dinner because staying would have turned grief into impulse, and I knew better than to confuse the two. At the door, she said, will you come back Saturday? For the fence, I looked at her. She gave a broken little smile. For the fence. Just the fence. I'll try not to ruin your life again before lunch. That's considerate. I'm growing. Slowly, fair. I walked home with the ring back on my pinky and the past walking beside me like it had somewhere to be. Saturday became the fence. Sunday became coffee on her porch after I realized I had left my tape measure at her place, which was a lie because I had 3 more in my truck. Monday became her bringing takeout to my shop because she owed me for hardware. Tuesday became a walk around the neighborhood that lasted an hour longer than planned. We were careful at first, then less careful. Sabine would text, are you eating or pretending black coffee is dinner again? I'd text back, I am a respected businessman. She'd reply, that's a no. One evening she showed up at my shop while my employee Desmond was sweeping near the front. Desmond was 58, blunt and built like a man who had carried lumber before breakfast for 40 years. He looked at Sabine, then at me, then back at Sabine. You the neighbor with the fence? He asked. Sabine smiled. That's me. Desmond nodded. Fence looks good, he did it right. He did. Desmond leaned on the broom. Good, he gets moody when wood wins. I pointed toward the back. Desmond, what? I'm helping your social skills. Sabine laughed. He always needs help, constantly. I sighed. This is why I work alone in my office. Desmond looked at Sabine. Bring him food if you want him human. I've noticed. When she left, Desmond didn't joke. He just looked at me and said, that's the one. I didn't ask what he meant. Yeah, be careful. I am's. No, you're being polite. Careful is different. That stayed with me. Sabine and I started dating without calling it that for a few days, which is exactly the kind of adult nonsense people do when words have consequences. We went to dinner at a small place near Main Street. We walked through the Saturday market. She came over to my house one night to help me make pasta and spent 20 minutes criticizing my knife skills. "You cut onions as they owe you money," she said. "They do. Let me. I run a business that uses sharp tools." And yet she took the knife from me and I let her because I'm not unreasonable. Also because she stood close enough that I forgot what argument I was making. She glanced up. "You're staring. I'm supervising. Badly. I was told I needed help with social skills. Desmond seems wise. Desmond thinks every problem can be solved with clamps and lunch. That's not the worst philosophy." The first time I kissed her again. It happened on my porch after dinner. She was leaving, then not leaving. I was walking her to the steps, then not stepping back. She looked at me and said, "This is probably too fast." "Probably. We're not 21. Good." "I was an idiot at 21. You were sweet." "I was an idiot with manners." She smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Grady, I don't want to use nostalgia as a shortcut." "Neither do I. Then what are we doing?" I reached for her hand slowly enough that she could refuse. She didn't. "We're finding out if the people we are now can sit in the same room as the people we were then." That sounds very responsible. I hated saying it. I could tell. Then she kissed me first. It wasn't wild, it wasn't desperate. It was careful, then less careful, then quiet. When she pulled back, her forehead touched mine for 1 second before she stepped away. "I should go," she said. "Yeah, neither of us moved." She pointed toward her house. "That's me being mature. You're doing great, very inspirational. Don't make me laugh. I'm trying to leave with dignity. I'll stand here respectfully. You're terrible. I've been told." She crossed the street, looked back once, and I knew I was in trouble. Not the dramatic kind, the real kind where your routine stops protecting you because somebody knows where the door is. For 2 weeks it felt almost easy. That was the dangerous part. We both wanted to believe the truth had cleaned the old wound. It hadn't. It had only removed the wrong bandage. Sabine was happy, but sometimes I'd catch her going quiet after a good moment, like happiness made her suspicious. I was happy too, but I kept one foot near the exit without admitting it. When she didn't answer a text for 3 hours, I told myself I didn't care and then checked my phone like a teenager with a mortgage. One Friday night she came over with groceries and said, "I'm cooking." I looked into the bags. "You bought vegetables, bold attack. You'll survive. I've built decks in August. Don't underestimate me." We were halfway through dinner when a knock hit my front door. I wiped my hands and opened it. My sister Lily stood there with a bag from the bakery in one hand and suspicion already forming on her face. Lily was 3 years older than me, a high school guidance counselor, and the only person alive who had seen the full version of what happened after Sabine left. She had watched me lose weight, stop sleeping, cancel plans, and pretend I was fine so badly that nobody believed me. She was also the person who had sat beside me in that jewelry store 10 years ago and said, "Don't buy the biggest one, buy the one that looks like her." Her eyes moved past me. Sabine stood in the kitchen. Lily's face went cold. "No," she said. I stepped onto the porch and partly closed the door behind me. "Lily," she pushed it open. "No, don't Lily me." Sabine set down the spoon she was holding. "Lily," Lily laughed once. "You remember my name, great start." "Lily, please," I said. She turned on me. "How long?" "A couple of weeks." "A couple of weeks," she looked at Sabine. "You walked back into his life and got comfortable in 2 weeks." Sabine's face went pale. "I moved across the street by accident. That part I might believe, the rest not so much." I kept my voice low. "Come outside with me." "No, I'm not the one who should leave." Sabine wiped her hands on a towel, though they were clean. "She has a right to be angry." Lily pointed at her. "Don't do that. Don't stand there being gracious like that fixes anything." "It doesn't," Sabine said. "You broke him." "Lily," I warned. "No, Grady. You don't get to protect her from a sentence you lived through." Lily's voice shook now, but she wasn't yelling. That made it worse. "He bought a ring. He had a plan and you cut him off like he was some guy you barely knew." Sabine nodded, tears already in her eyes. "I know. You know now. That's convenient." I stepped between them. "Enough." Lily stared at me. "You're serious?" "Yes, she doesn't get to come back because there was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't just a misunderstanding," I said. "It was 10 years of both of us living with the wrong story." Lily looked at Sabine. "Did he tell you who held the pieces? Because it wasn't you." Sabine's mouth trembled. "No. It wasn't." The room went quiet, then Sabine moved toward the back door. "I'm going home." I turned. "Sabine," she shook her head without looking at me. "You need to talk to your sister. Don't leave like this." I'm not making this worse, Lily said nothing, but her face said plenty. Sabine left through the back, crossing the yard and going through the repaired gate as the house itself had rejected her. I looked at Lily, she crossed her arms. What? That was not okay, she needed to hear it, she already knows, good then she can hear it twice. I took a breath and kept control of my voice. You're my sister, you helped me through hell. I will never forget that, but you don't get to run my life because you remember my worst year, her eyes flashed. I'm trying to keep you from repeating it. I know and I love you for that. But if I'm making a mistake, it's mine to make. You really believe she won't run again? I didn't answer fast enough. Lily's face softened with pain. That's what I thought. She left the bakery bag on my counter and walked out. For the first time since Sabine came back, the house felt too quiet in the old way. I called Sabine that night. No answer, I texted. I'm sorry about tonight, please talk to me. Nothing. The next morning her blinds stayed closed, her car was in the driveway, I walked over and knocked. Sabine, it's me. No answer, I knocked again. You don't have to open the door, but I'm not doing this through silence. Still nothing. A neighbor 2 houses down, Mrs. Kowalski was watering plants and pretending not to watch. She was in her 70s, sharp as a nail, and knew every car on the street by sound. You okay, Grady? She called. Fine, she lifted one eyebrow. That word is usually a crime scene. I'm handling it. Handle it louder, she's home. I almost laughed. Thank you, Mrs. Kowalski, you're welcome. And fix your mailbox, it leans. Good talk. Sabine didn't open the door. For 3 days she avoided me with the discipline of a woman who had made a decision and hated every second of it. She left early, came home late, ignored calls, answered one text with I'm sorry, I can't. That was all. I knew that pattern. I had lived the deluxe edition 10 years earlier. At first, pride got involved. Fine, I thought. If she wants to disappear from across the street, let her enjoy the athletic challenge. By the second day, I knew pride was just fear wearing a cleaner shirt. By the third day, I was angry, not loud angry, useful angry. I had let her leave once without making her face me. I had accepted a terrible answer because I thought dignity meant not pushing. Maybe sometimes it does. But sometimes dignity means refusing to let someone make a life-changing decision and call it kindness. That evening, I parked my truck in my driveway and saw her step out of her car across the street. She spotted me and immediately turned toward her front door. No, I said, not loud, but enough. She froze. I crossed the street. Grady, please don't. I'm not doing this again. She fumbled with her keys. There's nothing to say. There's plenty. You're just trying to leave before the bill arrives. She turned then, eyes tired and red. Your sister is right. My sister is hurt. She watched what I did to you. She watched what happened. That doesn't give her the right to decide what happens next. Sabine shook her head. I brought all of this back into your life. You were fine before I came here. I laughed once. That's your argument. Was I fine? I had a life. I had a schedule. That's nothing. No, it's not. It paid my bills and kept me moving, but don't stand there and tell me I was living some grand, peaceful life because I owned a cordless drill and remembered trash day. She looked away. I stepped closer, still leaving space. You're doing it again, her eyes snapped back. Don't. Yes, again, you get scared. You decide what I can handle. Then you disappear and call it protecting me. That's not fair. It's accurate. I don't want to hurt you. Then stop making decisions for me. Her face crumpled for half a second. And she turned toward the door. I reached out and put my hand flat against the door before she could open it. Not trapping her, just stopping the escape route long enough for words. If you tell me you don't love me, I'll leave. She went still. If you tell me you don't want this, I'll go home and I won't knock again. But if this is guilt, if this is you punishing yourself because Lily looked at you like the past walked into my kitchen, then no. I won't help you run, Sabine whispered. You should hate me. I tried, you're very annoying, it didn't stick. A tear slipped down her cheek and she gave a small, broken laugh. I lowered my hand from the door. Talk to me. She stared at the keys in her hand. When Lily looked at me, I saw exactly what I did. Not the romantic version, not the misunderstanding version, the real one. I saw your sister remembering you broken because I was too proud and too scared to ask one question. That's true. I know. And leaving now doesn't change it. It stops me from causing more. No, it lets you feel noble while I get abandoned twice. She closed her eyes. I hated saying it that bluntly. I also knew she needed the blunt version. We both did. I don't know how to stand in front of your family, she said. I don't know how to be happy with you when I'm the reason they had to watch you suffer. You stand there and don't run. That's your whole plan, pretty much. That's not enough. It's the first. Was Deb. Adults love those, very boring, very effective. She wiped her cheek. You make jokes when you're scared. Still breathing too. She looked at me then, really looked, and the fight went out of her shoulders. I love you, she said like it hurt to admit. I had imagined hearing that again more times than I'll admit. In every version, I had some perfect answer. In real life, I stood in her driveway beside two trash bins and said, "Good," she blinked. "Good, I'm glad. I would have felt stupid doing this next part alone," her brow furrowed. "What next part?" I pulled the ring from my pocket, her hand flew to her mouth. "I was going to wait," I said. "Do the mature thing, more dates, more talking, maybe a restaurant where the bread isn't wrapped in paper. But you and I have already lost 10 years to bad timing and worse communication, so I'm adjusting the plan." "Grady? No, you're going to let me finish." She nodded, crying openly now. "This ring was yours when we were 21. Back then, I thought proposing meant I was certain life would be easy with you. I was an idiot. Now I know better. Life won't be easy. Lily won't clap tomorrow. You'll still want to hide when guilt gets loud. I'll still want to act like I don't need anyone when I'm scared. We'll probably argue about fences and onions and whether coffee counts as dinner." She laughed through tears. I held up the ring. "But I love you," I never really stopped. "And I'm done letting silence make decisions for us." She stared at the small band in my hand. "It doesn't have the stone. I know it's damaged." "So were we," she gave me a look through tears. That was almost poetic. Stress got me. She laughed again, then covered her face. I stepped closer. "Sabine Whitman, will you marry me? Not because we're trying to erase 10 years. Not because guilt needs a happy ending. Because we're here now and I want the woman standing in front of me. The one who messes up, tells the truth late, cooks better than she explains, and needs to stop running before I have to take up jogging." She lowered her hands. "That proposal was very you. I'll take that as a compliment until corrected." "Yes," she whispered. I didn't move. "Say it clearly." She nodded, stronger. "Yes, I'll marry you." I slid the ring onto her finger. It was too small for the right finger and too large for another, so it landed awkwardly for the moment, and somehow that fit us perfectly. We both looked at it and laughed because the ring on the wrong finger had started the disaster, and now the same problem had circled back with better intentions. She stepped into me and I held her, not like I was saving her, not like she was fixing, just like two people who had finally stopped treating fear like wisdom. Lily didn't accept it right away. When I told her, she stared at me across her kitchen table and said, "You proposed in a driveway, yes. With the old ring, yes. That is either romantic or a medical concern. Could be both." She didn't smile. I leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to pretend you're happy." "Good, I'm not. I'm asking you not to punish her forever for something I'm choosing to forgive." Lily looked toward the window. "Forgiving isn't the same as forgetting. I know, she could hurt you again. Yes, you say that like it's acceptable. It's reality. Anyone I love can hurt me, including you, including me." She rubbed her forehead. "I hate when you sound reasonable. I've been practicing." Her eyes filled, and for the first time I saw the fear under the anger. "I can't watch you go through that again. You won't have to watch from the outside this time. I'm not 21, I'm not hiding in my shop pretending I'm fine. If things get hard, I'll say so. You better." "I will." A week later, Sabine came with me to Lily's house, not because Lily invited her warmly. The text had said, "Dinner Sunday, she can come." "Don't make it weird," Sabine read it and said. "That is the most terrifying hospitality I've ever seen. Lily once told a restaurant manager their soup had commitment issues. This is growth. I'm serious." So is she. That's the problem. At dinner, Lily was civil. Sabine was nervous but didn't overperform. That mattered. She didn't try to charm her way out of the past. She helped clear plates, answered questions, and when Lily finally said, "I don't know how to trust you," Sabine didn't cry or defend herself. She put the plate down and said, "I know. I'm not asking you to, I'm asking for the chance to show up long enough that you don't have to guess." Lily studied her. "That's a better answer than I expected." Sabine nodded. "I had 10 years to think of it." Lily almost smiled. Almost. That was how the piece started, not with hugs, not with some big emotional scene, just one dinner where nobody left early and nobody lied. Sabine moved into my house 3 months later. We did it slowly, partly because we were adults, and partly because every box she brought over seemed to carry a question with it. One night she stood in my garage holding a box labeled kitchen and said, "Are you sure?" I looked up from clearing a shelf. "About the shelf, about me moving in?" "No. I hate having someone around who feeds me and kisses me and tells me when I'm being impossible." "Grady," I set the box down, "I'm sure. What if I mess up?" "You will." She narrowed her eyes. "Comforting, so will I, then we talk before anyone starts packing." She looked at the garage, the workbench, the life I had kept so controlled no one could disturb it. "I don't want to be a storm in your house." "You're not a storm." I was. You were a woman who made one terrible choice and then built a decade of guilt around it. I was a man who turned pain into a business model and called it stability. We're both charming disasters, she laughed. That should be on our wedding invitations. Absolutely not. The new ring came later. We had the old band repaired and kept it, but I bought her a proper engagement ring with Lily's reluctant help. That trip to the jewelry store was strange in the best way. Lily sat beside Sabine at the counter, looked at one ring and said, "Too flashy," Sabine nodded. "Agreed." I looked between them. "Should I be worried that you two are forming a committee?" Lily didn't look up. "You should be grateful. Your taste is sentimental and financially reckless." Sabine smiled. "She's not wrong. I brought both of you. This is what betrayal looks like." Lily slid a ring toward Sabine. "Try this one." Sabine did. It fit. For a second, none of us spoke. Lily looked at her hand, then at me. "That one looks like her." I knew what that cost my sister. Sabine did too. "Thank you," Sabine said softly. Lily nodded. "Don't make me regret being generous." Sabine met her eyes. "I won't run." Lily held the look. "Good." That was as close to a blessing as Lily knew how to give then. It was enough. We planned a small wedding for the following spring. Nothing dramatic. Backyard, close friends, decent food, and Desmond already threatening to give a speech no one approved in advance. At the shop he asked, "You nervous about marriage?" "About the speech, deeply," he grinned. "Good." Mrs. Kowalski insisted on helping with flowers despite the fact that neither of us had asked. She told Sabine he was too quiet before you came. Sabine looked at me. "Was he?" Mrs. Kowalski patted her arm. "Like a mailbox with bills in it," I said. "That is oddly specific." "And accurate," Sabine said. "Life didn't become perfect. That's the part people leave out because perfect sounds cleaner." Sabine still had days when guilt made her go quiet. I still had moments when a delayed text pulled an old wire in my chest. Lily still needed time. Sometimes dinner with her had warm moments followed by stiff ones. Sometimes Sabine cried afterward in the truck and got angry at herself for crying, but she stayed. That was the difference. One night after a hard dinner at Lily's, Sabine sat beside me in the truck and said, "I wanted to leave halfway through." "I know, you knew." "You reorganized the sugar packets by height," she groaned. "I did not. You built a small corporate structure. I was panicking, but you stayed." She looked out the windshield. "Yeah," I took her hand. "That counts," she squeezed back. "I'm trying." "I know, and you. I'm trying not to punish you for things you haven't done today." She turned to me then. "That counts too." We sat there for a minute. Two adults in a parked truck, not fixed, not flawless, just honest enough to keep going. 10 years earlier, I thought love was the part where you felt certain. Now I think it's the part where you stop disappearing when certainty runs out. Sabine and I bought a bigger house 6 months before the wedding. Not huge. Just enough space for her books, my tools, a kitchen we could both move around in, and a backyard fence that did not require emotional supervision. My business grew enough that I hired another guy and stopped working every Sunday. That felt unnatural for about a month, then embarrassingly nice. I bought a newer truck. Sabine said it didn't have character yet. "Give it time," I told her. "I'll spill coffee in it responsibly." She said, "That's the man I agreed to marry." Lily came over more often. She and Sabine never became fake best friend clothes, and I respected that. Real trust takes longer than a montage, but they built something sturdier. Sabine showed up. Lily noticed. That was the whole repair. The week before the wedding, Sabine found me in the garage holding the old ring. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, thinking. Dangerous habit." She leaned beside the workbench. "About what?" I rolled the old band between my fingers. "About how close we came to losing the rest of our lives because nobody asked the obvious question." She took the ring from my hand and slid it onto her pinky. "Still the wrong finger, still not quite right, still ours." "I ask one now," she said. "What, are you okay?" I looked at her, at the woman I had loved, lost, found, confronted, chosen, and learned again. "Yeah," I said, "I'm okay," she smiled. "Good, because Lily wants to know if Desmond is allowed near the microphone." "No," that's what I said. "Marrying you was clearly the right decision. Technically. You haven't done it yet. I'm committed to the paperwork." She laughed, and the sound moved through the garage like it belonged there. I didn't get the 10 years back, neither did she. We had to stop pretending love could refund time. It can't. But sometimes, if you're brave enough to knock on the wrong door, fix the broken fence, ask the ugly question, and refuse to let fear make decisions, you don't get the past back. You get something better. You get the life that starts after both of you finally stop running. Would you have forgiven Sabine after learning the truth about the ring? And do you think Grady was right to propose before everything with Lily was fully healed?